Buenas noches, familia. Thank you so much for making the time to join us. Today, we have the opportunity to catch up and talk a little bit with the producer of a wonderful film that is being reimagined, Father of the Bride. I know, you're going to say Steve Martin, Martin Short, Spencer Tracy. No. This is a new version that is dropping bien prontito y tenemos la oportunidad de hablar con Paul Perez, que es el productor de la película. This film is starring Andy Garcia, Gloria Estefan y un cast espectacular. And it's definitely a modern reimagining of a classic. So hang out with us for a bit and let's get into it with Paul. Thank you so much, Paul, for making the time to be with us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for making such a wonderful film. It's truly enjoyable. I caught myself laughing out loud. I know you have some star power with Mr. Garcia, but you guys really did a great job.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you, what was the motivation as you worked to reimagine this classic?
Yeah, it came out of, I was an executive at Warner Brothers in their Warner Picture Group. And we had recent success with Crazy Rich Asians, which did so well, not just for the Asian community, but it was just embraced by everyone. And me having a Cuban background from Miami and not seeing a lot of, quality films like that studios are involved in with the proper budgets and, really getting behind something like this. With a commercial idea, I was like, it behooves us not to try to make this movie or make a movie like this, like Crazy Rich Asians. And I knew the power of intellectual property and how it might be quote unquote easier to make a movie at Warner Brothers if you have like an iconic title. So I thought that might be the easiest way to kind of unify not just the Latin community around a family comedy with a stellar Latin cast, but also providing a title that everyone knows. So when I saw Follow the Bride and that was originally a Warner Brothers movie with Spencer Tracy and Elizabeth Taylor, and I didn't know that. I always knew the Steve Martin version, which I loved, and I was like, that might be that. I think that's the opportunity. And so I went around town and tried to get the best take I could of what would be the perfect version of this movie for today's audience. And a big motivation for me was I wanted to make a movie with an entire Latin ensemble cast, but something that is not going to alienate the rest of the rest of the movie going audience. So I was like, because I already knew it was going to have a bit of a visceral reaction to any reboot or remake of something that everyone loves. Everyone's gonna be like, why are they doing this? So I was like, I need a story that'll cut through that and be like, oh, this is the reason to make that. And when Matt Lopez, the writer on the film, came in with a brilliant way into the movie and making it, something that's not just about being Latin, but something that's, in this case, it's about, a family that's kind of in turmoil, but also trying to celebrate this wedding. I was like, that's the way into a movie for 2022. So it all came together like that. And, the making a classic movie for everybody, but also something that could be very important for me, in the Latin community, seeing us represented in a really respectful way.
And very powerful way, I may add. The female characters, all the characters are great, but it does have that mass appeal that it's not really, they happen to be Latino, right? It's not like you're boxing and in working the characters in a way that are predictable. It's just truly enjoyable. And the dynamics, I watched the Steve Martin too, loved it, but the writing it takes the characters into different places. The dynamic between the husband, and without giving it away, watch the film.
Yeah.
The dynamics between the parents, the dynamic with the youngest sibling, really interesting.
Yeah, I also I've worked on many Latin films, and I wanted to make a movie that also didn't it didn't reinforce the negative stereotypes of potentially a Latin movie. Even on the surface, even Latinos will see the movie and be like, oh, it's another low budget movie. it's not high quality. It's about the struggle, it's about maybe immigration. And, those are stories that need to be told for sure. And I do, and I watch those movies, but I wanted to make a movie that, it's kind of universally appealing. It didn't have any politics behind it. It was just pure entertainment, but with real issues and real three-dimensional characters, and made by Latins. I wanted a filmmaker. I'm Cuban, the writer is Cuban, but and that's the primary family in this movie, but also bring in Gaz Alazraqui, who is a Mexican filmmaker whose previous film, Nosotros los Nobles, also had the same spirit of, why can't we see Mexicans and Latinos as, really successful, we're dealing with everyday issues that everyone cares about. It's not about saving the restaurant or something like that, So that was a really, I wanted to, at least at the surface level, go in with that motivation, hitting those themes that were important to everybody.
Mission accomplished. Mission accomplished. Well done. Well done. So I know I gave up a little bit. My apologies, folks. But what are some of the key distinctions that you make from this one from the previous films?
Yeah. One thing that me and Matt decided on early on is, when watching the Steve Martin version, which I love, they had Diane Keaton, who was the mom and the wife, and she really didn't have, this is a world-class actress who's won Oscars, and she really didn't have a lot to do in that movie. She's excellent in the film, and you appreciate her dynamic, but I wanted the mother role to have a bigger, more opportunity to shine. And that was a really key problem, a key issue that we wanted to tackle. Another thing that, besides just being a Latin cast, we also wanted, maybe it's for selfish reasons too, I wanted the entire cast to be Latin, not just the primary family, but the family that they were marrying into. Because for me, if I didn't want it to be about Latin versus Black or Latin versus white and a racial issue, because there's so much conflict that you can get just marrying within your own race, so to speak. So it really created an opportunity to have, okay, these are normal issues, it is Cuban and Mexican, that is a cultural distinction, and we do embrace that, but it didn't have that racial element that I thought many, if many people that might have been developing this would have stepped into. Another difference is we knew how iconic the Martin Short wedding planner was, and he's great. I think it's one of my favorite characters ever, and I was like, we don't want to get, let's not mimic that same performance. That is singular. So we created the wedding planner. It's a woman this time, and Chloe Fineman, who's one of the only non-Latins in the movie, comes in, and she is a powerhouse and still has that same pedigree of Martin Short as an SNL cast member. And when we saw her, we're like, and someone had suggested her at the studio, and we're like, that is brilliant. That's awesome. I think that's going to bring a new energy. It's going to bring an outside perspective of someone that's not Latin into the movie. And I thought that was really important. Well, so we also like it's still in both versions, but we like the issue where it's a class issue in a way where, yes, the Andy Garcia character, like the Martin Short, like the Steve Martin version and Spencer Tracy, they're well off, but there's a tackling of, you're intimidated because the father of the groom is, has his own personality and is bigger. We also wanted to make that family, give them more to do in the movie as well, and have that real, three-dimensional characters and from that side of the family, and which also in turn honored the Mexican culture as well that we wanted infused in our film.
Yeah, it was super cool. It was super cool. I'm thinking about, like, you proposed to him? What? Yeah. What? Exactly. Like right. That you worked with gender roles and in a way that it was just.
Yeah. Another thing that I thought was interesting is we wanted to make our Andy Garcia, protagonist, have his own voice that was different than the Steve Martin version or the Spencer Tracy version. We like the fact that, we're embracing this, first generation immigrant who is, we're all immigrants in this country at one point, and embracing that, and like the potential of trying to keep tradition, and in this case, a Cuban tradition, but also trying to embrace the future of which is, the kids are born in this country, they are American, And it's hard, you know, I think a lot of people struggle with that when they have kids in this country and they're from another country. How do you preserve your culture, but also embrace, the American culture that you also love? And that is also very different than previous versions of the film.
I definitely can relate to that. You're talking to somebody who relocated here in 1988 with a 6-year-old child, who just turned 40 earlier this year. And it's the distinction of, the way, at least that I have reconciled it personally, is that for me, identity was defining. And for her, is part of it, part of her makeup, but it's not what defines her, right?
Right, absolutely.
Hey, so I have one more question for you. I actually have two, but one is, as you talk about this and all the experience that you have, what surprised you the most when you engage in this process?
For me, it was the traditionally Hollywood, or particularly at the major studios, it's you don't hear a lot of non-white voices. There's not a lot of non-white filmmakers, and it's the best time in the history of Hollywood where people are embracing that more. There's also a business to be had, but just seeing it first, that you hear that as a lot of lip service, but in this case, Warner Brothers was completely behind the movie. They, I shouldn't neglect my producing partners, Jeremy Kleiner, Dee Dee Gardner, and Brad Pitt at Plan B, who have a history of making movies and collaborating with non-white voices when they're telling non-white stories, from 12 Years a Slave to, Moonlight and Minari, and that's just to name a few. They are always embracing that because they know not only is it the right thing to do, but it's the best version of the movie is when you make it as authentic as possible. So getting those both sides from my producing partners at Plan B and also Warner Brothers, their full on support of me as a producer on the project, Gaz Al-Azraqi on the project, Matt Lopez, and also the many people behind the scenes that made this movie. They were full support of this is special. It's not just in front of the camera, but we're also, giving opportunities for people that maybe have never had the opportunity and are ready to step up and make Hollywood movies. So that for me was a surprise, and it was incredible. And I think it was a true collaboration, and it's I can't say enough about that.
I'm glad to hear that. And I can just hear it as you're talking about the project, just the joy that this collaboration has brought your way. So when it comes to the audience, right, what would you like for them to take away after watching the film?
Yeah, I think first off that these movies can be made, movies that are, traditionally rom-coms and family comedies aren't the first thing. It seems to be just superhero movies that are getting made now, or that really people are embracing. But there's great filmmakers and storytellers wanting to tell these stories, and we wanted to make we knew the success in this movie was we had to make an excellent film. We had to make the best movie possible, and it was taking a genre that maybe it was more popular in the 90s and maybe when the original movie was made, but elevating that material, and not just with terms of diverse casting, but also hitting on themes that are, a little more sophisticated and mature, but also maintaining that fun commercial viability, having a really commercial movie and also having a very, a sophisticated artsy movie. They don't have to be mutually exclusive, that you can make an incredible film that tackles both. And I think that's what we're going to get. I think when a lot of people see this movie, they might go, "Oh, you're remaking a classic," but I think it's different, and I think they're gonna be surprised at how well it is, and hopefully like was a lot of people are saying, like, we want this movie to. People are still watching the Steve Martin version. People are still watching the Spencer Tracy version. We want our movie to be that. We want our movies to have that same timelessness and exist in that same legacy of that title, where 20 years from now, you are showing this movie to your kids, and you don't have to be Latin to appreciate it. You can be anybody, because it is a family story. It's an American story. And I think that's something everyone's going to embrace. And that was our goal. Originally, when me, Gaz and Matt and Jeremy, at the very onset of this movie, we said, if this movie only works for Latins, then we failed as filmmakers. We want this movie to work for everybody. So I think that that's what I want people to take away from this, that this is in the tradition of a great title, and we're maintaining that tradition. And hopefully you'll like to see one even more.
Absolutely. Well, before we wrap up, I have to ask you, you said where we see more. So can you tell us a little bit about what are your next projects?
Yeah, I was an executive at Warner Brothers, and I now have a producing deal with Warner Brothers, which is incredible in film and television. So hopefully my next movie will be a departure from the romantic comedies or family comedies, and this is a prequel to the Denzel Washington movie Training Day. It's a movie that I developed also when I was at Warner Brothers as an executive. And that's a movie that I'm really excited about. We have, the original filmmaking team behind it as producers. So that's really exciting. And I think it's going to also have that same energy and sophistication of the first one, but also have that commercial viability. And I hope to make that movie this year.
I am super excited. Super excited. Thank you so very much, Paul.
Absolutely.
And best of luck on your projects. You are definitely hitting the right notes. And I want to really thank you for making the time to spend, some time with me and talk a little bit to our audience, and know that Philadelphia is here, and ready to welcome you and your projects whenever you want to come and visit us. And that the Philadelphia Latino Film Festival will always be your home in Philly. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Gracias a ti.
Ciao.
Bueno, mi gente, that's a wrap. Thank you, Paul, for making the time to be with us. And thank you, you guys, for tuning in and checking us out. Check Father of the Bride and keep on checking FLAFF programming. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.